All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the late morning program with Nam Ras. This is episode 42, Returning to Bhakti, with my friend Hari Kirtan. How's it going, Hari Kirtan Prabhu? Nice to see you.
Haribo, I'm doing well. I'm in Puri right now, getting a little bit of sun
Very
at the
nice.
beach.
Very nice. So, the reason this episode came about was so I put a Facebook post out a little while ago, and I said maybe I should try to interview someone who left Krishna consciousness like altogether. And so people were talking, and your name came up. And
Yeah,
but your story is really interesting because um, you left, but then you also returned. But you're also Gurukuli, like you were born. Your parents are Prabhupada disciples, so that's a really interesting
right.
dynamic. And so I think it's a great story that we can share with everyone. So let's just get into it. And what was your childhood like? Let's start there.
Well, like every Guru Kuli, I would say the childhood is probably the most complex issue, right? Most complex topic.
Right.
Um, so I was born into a Prabhupada disciple family in Germany
Hmm.
during the Hansaduta era,
Wow.
um, and pretty much my parents were in Hansaduta zone, moving around. So between the ages of 1 till 5, I was growing up in Singapore, uh, India, Sri Lanka, Philippines. Hansaduta was in charge of some of those places,
Right.
and just before I was turning 5 years old, we were living in Singapore at that time, and my father was printing Bhagavatams in Singapore. At that time, the printing industry was in Singapore.
Right. Right.
So we were living there, and he was taking care of that. But yeah, turning 5, something needed to happen. So there weren't many options at that time. I think Mayapur Gurukul, I'm not even sure if it even existed at that time. That was 1983. Could have
Mm.
existed. I'm not sure. Um, but looking at the options, my parents decided to go to New Vrindavan in America, which
Wow.
was the first step to a giant episode. Nevertheless, that was like the first big milestone in my life, I would say,
Right.
that I can remember. Before that, my memories fade a lot, but the move to New Vrindavan was definitely a major step. And
How old were you when you moved there?
I was 5 years old. I was
Okay.
5 years old. Yeah. So the Gurukul was in bloom, I would say. So I was put into Gurukul, and my parents quite quickly noticed that it wasn't such a conducive environment at that time.
Right.
Um, so there was a lot of things, a lot of difficulties. Getting into that is a whole nother topic, but
Right.
there was a lot of difficulties and struggles for the kids at that time, and also for the community. And basically, the children were kept sometimes in very bad conditions, and most of the qualified devotees were out on Sankirtan. Um, so yeah, those years were up and down. I would say definitely up and down. Um, I've developed some of my most long-lasting friendships during that time. Um, Probably because bonding through Krishna consciousness, of course, but also going through struggles together and persevering together. So that was a big aspect, and that went on all through until my mid-teenage years. I spent my life there in New Vrindavan up until things started to like shake up a lot, and the
Right.
community started falling apart, which is kind of when we left America.
And
Yeah.
you went back to Europe, or
At that time, actually, it's like a crucial part from my life. Also, that was the next big crucial step for me, because during that time in America, we had applied for a green card, right,
Yeah.
to stay, and my father had left back to Singapore to close up some business, and he wasn't aware that while the application is running, you can't leave the country,
Right.
right? So when he came back, he was like, "Okay, the government said you have to go. You have to go. Your application is not valid anymore."
Oh my gosh.
But our whole life had been like put on this one card, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so we decided to stay. We
Mm.
decided to stay somehow and make it work, which was um, a big choice, you know, a big decision to make. And but it kind of led also into like a limbo of not really feeling, you know, legal in a place. And it was my home, but still, I felt like anytime I could be sent away.
Mm.
So like when I was turning 14, 15, we had to go take care of our papers. And this is one of the main reasons why we also left America and we went back to Germany. And that kind of ended the whole era of New Vrindavan and feeling sketchy. And but it also begun a new life of trying to redefine myself because I was suddenly confronted with the whole world that I didn't know existed before, you
Right.
know,
Right.
like growing up in that bubble of New Vrindavan, protected from all sides. The outer world, uh, you know, the outer world at that time in ISKCON was not looked upon. It was
Mm.
like non-existent. So who was I? Who was Hari Kirtan suddenly in this world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, that Hari Kirtan didn't have a place in that world.
It's quite a common
That was
thing. It's quite a
yeah,
common thing among Gurukulis or people born in the movement that they're they live a very sheltered life, and then when it comes time 14, 15, 16, then they see, oh my God, there's this whole other world out there.
right. Yeah, so that was like the major conflict. It was a
Right.
real conflict because like in that now looking back at it, I can understand what happened. And also now I have children in the house that went through that age. And that age is so crucial for like personal identity.
Right.
So that was like, oh, shaken up. And the identity that I had didn't exist anymore in that outer world. And you know, being put into a normal public school. I was in New Vrindavan in Nandagram school, which was amazing. I had like great teachers, Mother
Right.
Ruchi and Mother Lila Sukha. They were perfect teachers, but I never went to a public school. So suddenly
Right.
I was in the world and there
Yeah.
was no devotees around. That was that was 1994, shortly after Harikesh had disappeared. So
Mm.
even the devotee yatra in Germany was very disturbed and um, you know inactive, maybe even said.
Right.
But that wasn't even an issue because I was confronted with this outer world, and that devotee Hari Kirtan had no place in it. Adding to that, my experiences in New Vrindavan of like at that time Kirtananda was being prosecuted for all kinds of illegal activities. So
Right.
for me, like that was like this door opened, and suddenly I could be a legal person with an identity. I could move around in the country without feeling, followed or without having to hide. Um, I could learn an education that I could pursue as a profession, and so all these factors kind of led me to leave, like deliberately leave the association of the devotees as a decision.
Mm.
I literally decided at that time I was having this experience, leaving behind what I had experienced and looking forward. Like this is a world where things are kind of predictable. You know, I can work, I can acquire a skill, I can influence my life. I'm in control, right?
You mean
In
like
control,
the outside world, outside of the devotee community?
right?
Right.
So this was like the experience that I had. So I kind of held on to it, and I lost complete sight of who I was before.
Wow.
And um, some of you may relate to this. As a Guru Kuli, some of us have a devotional name and a non-devotional name, right?
Right. Right.
So that's like a split personality in itself already.
Mm.
So that split personality kind of came out even stronger then, because I had the option to have a non-devotional name
Mm.
and go by that name, and that identity formed, and the devotional Hari Kirtan kind of went all the way in the back. It didn't exist anymore.
Was it completely that you wanted to have more control, or was it other things that led you to like, okay, I can't be a part of this anymore?
There were a few aspects. One is, of course, leaving behind all my friends and everything I knew, which was quite traumatic for me at that age. But also because what I had experienced was not just positive. It was at that time, a lot of negative emotion had been stored inside of me. So that negative emotion kind of helped me to reject, to reject myself, to reject that part of myself, and fully embrace something new, um, which later, obviously, I realized wouldn't work.
Mm.
But at that time, definitely, um, I deliberately made a choice to not be a devotee, because my experience at that time with being a devotee was connected to illegal activities, hiding from police and things like that. That was
Mm.
kind of the surroundings that I grew up in. Um, not to speak of like the abuse that was going on.
Right.
Um, so it was like almost like something positive had happened for me, because all these things had stopped, right?
Right. Right.
So I fully embraced that. I fully embraced it. But of course, embracing it, I also rejected the other part of me, which was very unhealthy in the long run.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what did it so when you made that decision, then how did that affect your like life practically? You moved out of your parents' home and you just went on your own?
Yeah. Eventually, I carried on with my education.
Right.
I got educated as a graphic designer. I went to school for graphic design. I was living by myself. And I remember some of my friends, Vrindavanath, you may know him,
Yes.
our god brother Vrindavanath, and Nityananda, and Krishna Chandra. He's now on the West Coast.
Mm.
They were visiting me in Germany a few times, and I felt so awkward. It was like such a different world for me. Um, and I remember there was a phase in my life where I actually didn't want anyone to visit me, and
That's really
I, I
interesting.
was I was hiding. I was
Mm.
hiding, like
Did
Krishna
you feel
can't
like
find me.
did you feel like they might have judged you, or you were afraid of that, or you didn't like that they were still devotees, or
Yeah, it made me face my old identity, and I had put that away, and it
mm.
was a little bit painful. It was a little bit painful, and to have to face that. There was actually a time where this, I guess, like undertone, I was working through my trauma in a very slow and inactive way, but
Right.
that's actually what was happening. But I remember specifically that there was a time where I couldn't even utter the Maha Mantra. That's how much trauma I had inside of me. That's how much I had shifted away from the devotees. I couldn't utter the Maha Mantra. It just wouldn't come out of my mouth.
Wow.
I was now looking back at it. It was like very shocking for me now.
Mm.
But yeah, those friends tried to visit me, and I would hide for a few years. I didn't want anyone to have my number, or Facebook was just coming out at that time.
Mm.
Yeah, I was hiding, and I went fully into a standard 9 to 5 material life.
Right.
as a graphic designer working. Yeah.
So what was your relationship with your parents at that time when you were kind of away from the devotees?
My the relationship with my parents was a little bit at a distance, I must
Right.
say, during that time. Um, Also connecting my previous experiences with my parents, kind of in a blame attitude.
Right. Right.
Um, right? Like they're the ones responsible for this.
Yeah,
Like
of course. Right.
they allowed this to happen. All these things. There was a lot of, I think, a lot of trauma stored inside of me. Blame, um, regret. All those things were coming up in my life,
Mm,
and it forced me away from devotees for some time
right.
until actually Krishna opened a little window, a
Mm,
little window of suffering for
right.
myself.
Did your parents ever communicate to you like how they felt about your choices? Like, okay, Hari Kirtan is like kind of away, and did they ever communicate anything?
Yeah, definitely. I remember one incident with my mother. um, I love my mother, just letting you all know that.
Right.
I have a good relationship with her now, but we did go through some difficulties, some rough patches. And I remember at that time, I must have been 19, 20, and I was together with this German girl in a relationship. And my mother confronted me and said, "How can you be with this person?" I said, "Why? What's the problem? She's a meat eater. How can you be with this person? She's a meat eater."
Right.
And from my perspective, I felt like, how can she be so judgmental? This is a nice person,
Right.
right? This is a nice person. How can you be so judgmental? You know, you're
Yes.
looking at everything through the glasses of your religion, right?
Mm,
Of course, there was some values behind it. Maybe it wasn't expressed properly, but those were the kind of interactions, like confrontations, we would have sometimes.
right.
And after a few years, she kind of accepted who I had become, and she let off, and our relationship became better and more in a friendly mood.
Mm. It's really interesting. I think about that a lot. That being a parent, and I know you have two daughters, and that um, it's really it's you have to kind of have a be attached but detached at the same time, because they have their own lives, they have their own choices that they need to make for themselves, and
Right.
you went through it, and I mean I think all devotee children sometimes go through it to a different extent. Like at some point we have to make that choice ourselves, and your
Yeah.
parents and my parents, and they have to deal with that maybe sometimes they might go astray, or they might go off the path a little while, but ultimately it's really not in your control, and that's what is scary. I mean, for me personally, it's scary. I have very small children, so it's a little bit time left for me to experience that, but that's something that I give kudos to parents. It's a difficult task to
Yeah.
have children, and then when they get older, they have to make their own choices, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Right. Looking back at it now, I feel like when you mature as a human being, you understand the difficulties of life, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
as a child, it's easy to blame, right? But when you mature, you understand that your parents have done the best for you that they could,
Right.
all the best, whatever options they had, they did the best for you. And there will always be mistake. There will always be something that's not 100% right, but we will make the same mistakes as well when we're
Yeah.
in that position,
Yeah. Yeah.
or even
Totally.
worse mistakes. Who knows?
You're right. Right. So now you're at you were living outside. You had a non-devotee relationship, and your relationship with your parents a little strained. So then what happened after that?
Well, I continued in my normal materialistic life. I was doing well in my life. I was working for a big German medical company. Um, I would say I was well situated, material life standard, a good car, a good house to stay in, all those things. But year for year went by, and it just continued. The same thing, the
Mm,
same thing just continued. And there was nothing really more that was coming other than maybe, the next option would be to go for maybe a bigger salary or something like that.
right.
But it wasn't really anything exciting anymore. I
Mm,
didn't feel intrigued. And 7, 8, 9 years went by, and still the same goals, the same thing. Oh, which vacation are we going to do this year? Let's go for
right.
2 weeks here or whatever. It became really mundane, and that feeling of a mundane life started to become stronger.
Right.
So dissatisfaction was there, and this wasn't satisfying. And then actually all it took was a little bit of suffering. Krishna gave me some suffering in
Right.
that surrounding. He gave me some suffering, and the Bhagavad Gita says we all come for different reasons. And
Mm,
I would go as far as to say most of us come for because we're suffering.
yes. It's
Right?
true.
That's one of the main reasons to go look for Krishna, is because you're suffering.
Right.
So he let me suffer a little bit. Um, I was married at that time to
Mm,
one German girl, and we had been together for I think 6 years plus, and we got married after 6 years of it. Was like a struggle. It was a struggle relationship. It was difficult,
right.
and in a materialistic environment, I guess that's an achievement, right? To go through some difficulties together.
Definitely. Yeah. 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 The trenches.
That was an achievement. So, oh yeah, why don't we get married? We've survived so many difficulties. Um, we got married, and 5 months in, I don't know, that relationship wasn't strong enough. The
Mm,
higher goal, the basis was missing, and it
right.
all came crumbling down. And it was tough for me. It was a good struggle for me, but at the same time, that's actually when I started realizing that my life was not going in a direction that I actually wanted. It was
Mm.
like a crossroad. It was a crossroad. Krishna
When you
gave
were
me a
look,
crossroad.
when you say that it wasn't going what you want, how you wanted, was it just because of that it was kind of becoming repetitive or boring, or was there something like something else that was missing?
There was definitely something else missing, and I don't know where that comes from. As children, we were always raised that we're meant to do
Oh, still there?
reason. So, Namras, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Great.
Yeah. Okay. So we're here for a reason, and it's almost like we were grown up with a destiny.
Right.
Yeah. Can you relate to that? I always felt like we grew up with a destiny.
Oh,
We're
totally.
meant to
Yeah.
fulfill something, right?
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
So that feeling of destiny, I felt was not being fulfilled, and I
Mm,
was already 30 plus years. I was in my mid 30s,
right.
and my whole consciousness shifted to looking back at my life. What have I achieved? What have I done
Mm,
with my life? And I realized that I was going in the wrong direction. Something was wrong. I
right.
wasn't. I didn't feel like I was fulfilling what I need to do. So there was a
Because
big need of correction.
interesting about the destiny part. Sometimes, I mean, and having that realization that you felt like there was something else that needed to be that was missing, or that you were destined for something else, or that you had to fulfill something else. That's a not everyone has that realization, I've noticed. I mean, I don't know it is what other people realize, but I'm thinking like for the people that have left Krishna consciousness, sometimes they feel that their destiny is not something spiritual, or it's just something, maybe something material, or but you did you feel that your destiny was something that was beyond, was spiritual essentially, or was it something material?
No, in that moment, actually, I had a realization that it was definitely something spiritual.
Wow. Wow.
Because in that suffering and what I had gone through in my life, I realized that everything that I was hanging on to, everything I was pursuing, was so temporary and unfulfilling. It wasn't satisfying. So if I'm meant to be happy, if I'm meant to do something with my life, it has to be something that is more valuable, more valuable than what I'm already doing.
Hmm.
It has to be a relationship that will last longer, that will always be there and
Hmm.
not go through up and downs and not leave me and not change again. It has to be
Right.
something that's eternal,
Right.
something
Right.
that's substantial. And that's what I realized. Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting that, was it that, I mean, you had that negative experience some sort of negative experience of Krishna consciousness life, but you had this like spiritual need. So there had to be maybe some softening of the heart to be like, okay, maybe it's what I grew up with, because sometimes it could very well be, I do need a spiritual thing, but it's not what I grew up with. That's totally not what I want. It's something else. You know what I mean? Like, it's not
Right.
Christian consciousness. It's Christianity, or it's another religion. So what kind of led you to maybe soften your heart a little bit about your past in Krishna consciousness?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned all of those different aspects. Like, it could have been something else. It could have been
Yeah.
this, or it could have been that.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would say a spiritual journey can go in all of those directions,
Mm.
even as a devotee. Even as
Yeah.
a devotee, if we're honest about it, um, and we have some doubt about our faith, we look to other places. That's
Yeah.
natural. So in that moment, when I was in the material world, so to say, bewildered and looking for some light, I looked at all these places. I looked at Christianity. I looked at all these things.
Wow.
And I looked at my past identity, and I realized that I had lost myself somewhere on the road.
Mm.
I used to be someone very in tune with my spiritual identity, and I had lost that. So, and that was actually the point where I realized I have to go back to that person. I have to recultivate that person. I have to bring that person back to life, the
Wow.
spiritual identity. And of course, at that turning point, it wasn't immediately obvious for me that I would be a Krishna Bhakta. It
Mm.
wasn't obvious, but the desire was there. The desire to change, the desire to search for something was there.
Wow.
And it began in small steps. It began in small steps, looking for inspiration, listening to speakers, and one thing led to another. One thing
Mm.
just led to another,
Wow.
and until I was back at the doorstep of Krishna's devotees, and that's where I felt, actually, yes, this is where I'm meant to be. And
Mm.
it clicked. It clicked. This is where I need to go. You
Mm.
know this is who I am.
How did you deal with did the negative experience ever come back? Like, what was the biggest obstacle for you to like coming back and reconnecting yourself with devotees?
Yes, that was there in the first initial, let's say, transition, and it does come up once in a while. There's let's say in ISKCON we do have some certain patterns and in our community
Right.
that are not always healthy. They still exist, and those kind of things kind of do trigger my memories of the past. Um,
Do you mind giving
but
an example? Just one example?
yeah, I mean, one example is child protection.
Right.
Being exposed to certain things in the Gurukul, and seeing that there are symptoms of, if it's not physical abuse, there's a lot of mental abuse that still happens.
Right. Right.
And but like the devotees community, because we are um, looking at it from a spiritual perspective, we may not see the damage that's being done.
Right. Right.
So that's sometimes a little bit hard to accept.
Mm.
Um, Also, I've been in the professional world for quite a long time, and being around devotees, it's very often that you're surrounded by people that are not professional, and that's
Right.
really difficult to work with people.
Mm.
So there's many instances,
Right.
or like open-mindedness. Sometimes I find the most closed-minded people amongst devotees, and
Yes.
I'm very shocked about it.
Right.
So
It's
those things, like being out in the world, being exposed to a lot of variety of people, I feel like those are things where I kind of still edge up upon.
yeah.
But I also realize that even our community, ISKCON community or devotee community, uh, is also very young, and we're all humans, and nothing will ever be perfect as long as there's humans involved.
Mm. Mm.
So,
Yeah.
and it's something that every society, every community will have to deal with. That's
Yeah.
just the truth.
So okay, so we're here now that you have this spiritual need, and now you are going, you explored other faiths and things like that, and now you've come back thinking, okay, now I need to essentially reconnect myself to my roots. So tell us a little bit about how that started.
So after realizing that I had to reawaken that identity that I had before as a devotee, I thought to myself, okay, if there's some truth in the teachings that were taught to us in those early years, then I can easily do an experiment and have a result,
Mm.
right? Because as a child, you're not really so aware of those kind of things. You just kind of follow along, follow the instructions, and of course, there's realizations as a child, even I would say, but later in life, the logic kicks in, right? So I wanted to have a real result. I
Right.
wanted to do the experiment and have a result. So I started chanting. That was the first step. I started chanting. It's like, this is the
Wow.
core of our teachings. This
Yes.
is the core. I'm going to start chanting. I didn't tell anyone. I just started chanting. And after a little bit of chanting every day, I started to feel my life is becoming lighter. Even though there's so many difficulties, so much struggle, so many things to worry about, it doesn't affect me so much anymore. And that was like the first aha effect. Like, oh wow, this little bit of effort has already made my life so much better.
Mm.
So there's truth to it. If there's truth to it, then I can give myself to it.
I love that part where you're saying I didn't tell anyone and I started chanting, because that was coming purely from your desire and
Yes.
your kind of uh um your efforts to reconnect with your faith and with everything like that. So I think that's really fascinating that you said that it's without telling anyone, because that's purely coming from your own your own efforts and your own desires. And I think that's so powerful. And as devotees, we really need to think about why we do things. Like, do we do things because we're told to do them, or do we do things because we want to do them ourselves? And we need to consider, if we are doing the former, then we should think, how can we do it? how can I arrange my life so I can do it because I want to do it. And I mean, it starts with someone telling you, obviously, but it
Yeah.
should be something that you want to do yourself, and that's such a powerful spiritual experience. Please go
Yeah.
on with the story.
Yeah. So after having that first result, I started coming around a little bit because I realized, okay, there's truth to this, so I need to pursue it.
Wow.
So I went to Kuli Mela 2000. What was it? 2008 in Belgium.
Oh, okay.
That was my first, let's say, re-entry
Mm,
into the devotee world, right?
wow.
Um, I met up with some of my friends from New Vrindavan. They were there at that time.
Hmm.
And so I started like reaching out again, developing my relationships. And that's how it started. And somewhere down the line, um, I met my wife, Vrindavan,
Mhm.
Vrindavaneshwari, and she was actually one of the main supporters to encourage me to take things more seriously and to really invest in my spiritual life. And to this day, she's still my biggest supporter and is always pushing me and
Wonderful.
always pushing me on to keep going. And
What did she start like? What did she start to do that you felt supported you in your new awakening? You could say.
at that time, we were reading books together. We were reading the books from Bhakti Tirtha Swami.
Oh, okay.
Um, and I must say that was a very vital part of my journey back, because I remembered my devotee life as, reading from the scriptures, and all these things were, of course, related to pastimes, but philosophically they were sometimes really difficult to understand,
Yeah.
and maybe not even so relatable. So reading Bhakti Swami's books really helped me to see a practical, everyday, use for these teachings.
Mm,
And it was it was incredible because I had actually never heard Krishna conscious philosophy so clearly, like
mm,
from Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Like reading his
right.
books made everything so easy. Like, of course, yes, it's like this. Of course, I can apply it like that.
Right. Right.
It was really tangible, and that made it easy for me to accept and to apply.
Mm.
That's for sure.
And so okay, when you so then you both were reading together, and you were meeting and things like that. So then what was like the next step in your spiritual journey?
My next step in my spiritual journey after that, I was going to temples. I started going to the programs, and actually, 2015, um, I took a journey to America again, to New York, to the New York Ratha Yatra. And after that, I drove together with Vrindavan to Gitanagari for Bhakti Tirtha Swami's 10th anniversary of his passing away.
Hmm.
And um, our Guru Maharaj Radhanath Swami was there. And that was our first meeting after, I don't know, 20 something years.
Wow.
Uh,
Did he remember
and
you?
it was interesting because, I mean, someone like Radhanath Swami, you never forget in your life,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter how long you're separated from him, you never forget him.
Yes.
So I was sitting in the temple room of Gita Nagari amongst all the other prabhus, all the other men,
Yes.
and he was giving class and he was looking around, and I had a feeling that he didn't know who I was,
Yeah.
which was really funny. Uh, but then suddenly he like jolted and he looked back at me and he recognized me, and then he had a big smile on his face and he was so
Wow.
happy. And I mean, this is like 20-year difference. Yeah, I was a small kid when he
Oh,
saw me last, right?
wow.
How could he recognize me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he did, yeah, and he carried on with his class, and then afterwards we talked.
What did you say? I mean, do you remember that conversation?
I remember the conversation. He kept repeating, "I'm so happy. I'm so happy to see you.
Wow.
So happy to see you." And and I was telling him a little bit of my life journey and how I made it to Gita Nagari, and that Vrindavan had helped me come here. And
Yeah.
he just kept repeating, "I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy." He gave
I
me a big hug.
Yeah, there's that picture of Maharaj like cooking on the big stove at like Rainbow Gathering, and you're like in the background as a kid. So
Yeah.
even as a kid, you had a relationship with him. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So as a child in New Vrindavan, Radhanath Swami was always a very special person. And he was like, for me, he was like a saint. That's how I envisioned him. I remember he always had a bandage around his foot, because he would dance so much that his foot would hurt. His foot was always bandaged.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was always bandaged. And when he led Kirtan, he would always ask me to play mridanga, even though I wasn't really a good mridanga player. But
Mm,
it didn't matter to him. He always engaged me in playing mridanga.
right.
So we had that relationship in Kirtan already. And at that time, rainbow gatherings were a thing.
Yeah.
Um, for those of you who don't know rainbow gatherings, I don't know if they're still happening. It's like a hippie gathering where
Yeah.
they would meet in like this natural resort, and there would be no money, no phones, nothing.
Yeah.
So Radhanath Swami would put up a camp there, and he would cook all day, from the morning till the evening. He would cook all day for everyone. And one of his most famous dishes, the peanut butter halava, was created. It was created during that time. And I would help him sometimes in the kitchen cooking.
Oh,
I mean, kitchen, it was in the forest, right? Big
yeah.
pots in the forest. So I would help him at
Wood
that time.
fires and
And
things.
right, it was just out in the woods.
Right.
Simple.
Amazing.
Um, in giant pots. And then in the evening, there would be roaring kirtans through the night, and he would dance.
Mm.
Yeah. And also, we traveled once together through north upstate New York. He was visiting different communities and preaching. And I remember being on that trip together with him. And we have I have a few memories of him tossing grapes in my mouth in the van, while driving.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then you went to Gita Nagari and everything like that. So then so did you think of Radhanath Swami like, okay, this is someone, like, did you think of taking initiation? And now what was the next step in your like recommitment to like Krishna consciousness?
Yeah. So after really realizing Krishna consciousness is what I need, um, then yeah, the ISKCON world, the Krishna conscious world, let's say the Krishna conscious world, is also still a big world.
Yeah.
There's so many gurus, so many people to take shelter from. So I was a bit, yeah, I was still searching. Who's it gonna be? Who is it gonna be? So I was listening to a lot of lectures online, videos, watching videos, lectures from all different gurus in ISKCON. And I was trying to find a connection, like, who's my teacher? Who's my teacher? Who's my guru? And basically, after searching for so long, um, meeting Radhanath Swami again kind of just solidified, this is my guru. This
Wow.
is my guru. He's been with me throughout my life. I felt he had never left me, even though I had left, but he had never left me.
Mm.
So I felt, yeah, this is the person that I can trust solely. Because having the experiences that I had, there's a big trust issue. Yeah, and I
Totally.
think
Yeah.
my generation still has that major trust issue. Like, will you ever trust a spiritual path again, or a person
Yeah.
that's a teacher? That's a big question. Can I trust that person? Because there's nothing worse than spiritual, how do you say, um, spiritually being neglected, or led down a wrong path. There's
Yeah.
no healing from that.
Right. Right.
you know that's the last solace you have when everything in the world tears down. If you can't count on that pillar, then you can be easily lost. So
Mm.
that trust was a really hard decision to make, but when I met him, it was not hard at all. It was very easy.
Now, when you were returning, like you had friends, your childhood friends, did any of them either were like, okay, Hari Kirtan's like kind of getting too much into it. Like, it's great that he's back. It's great that he's back, but like he's getting too much into it. Like, was anyone ever like discouraging, or what was their feedback to you, like getting super into it? Like for a Guru Kuli, like an older Guru Kuli, to get back into Christian consciousness and go for initiation and like just do the whole thing 110%. That's like, it's big. It's like a big thing.
Yeah, actually, from my devotee friends, from friends that I had grown up with, I only received um, positive feedback,
Wow.
and they felt very inspired, very inspired. Of course, those people who had maybe negative thoughts about what I was doing maybe never spoke up. Maybe that can also be a fact, but
Right.
at least the experience I had was always positive. And down the road, over the years, more and more people have actually come to me and have said, I've watched you go from that person to that
Yeah.
person, and
Right.
it has inspired me as well to
Wow.
take on my spiritual life. So, and I'm not saying this in an egotistical way, but
Sure.
there's a lot of empowerment there when Krishna is on your side and you choose to do the right thing, and all doors open, all doors open,
Wow.
and there's no stopping unless you stop yourself, and that's kind of the experience I had, that the floodgates opened, and I was embraced, fully back into the association of the devotees, and in such a fast way and merciful way that I could never have imagined.
Wow. So were you living in Germany still at the time, like when all this was happening?
Yes, I was still in Germany.
Okay. So then what happened? Did you like more in recent times? I know you live in Mayapur now. So what led you to like ultimately be like, okay, Mayapur? Like what, like tell us a little bit about that.
Well, living in Germany, there's of course a wonderful German yatra there. So
Yeah.
as a family, we started getting more and more involved in the German yatra, and also just going from temple to temple, getting to know everyone. And I really like put all my heart into Kirtan, because
Yeah.
I had been a musician from a very very young age. Even in Vrindavan, I was already producing music and writing songs and stuff like that. And while I was away, I put a lot of effort into like gigging on stages and traveling around doing playing pop songs and developing guitar skills and all these things. So Kirtan was like the easy connection for me, because it was something musical I could apply myself to
Yeah.
quite quickly. And a second effect that it had was that, like, singing really healed me. That's how I
Mm.
felt. Like chanting really healed me quickly, and it helped me transcend myself and like let go of all those inhibitions
Beautiful.
and limitations that I had held on to. It was one of the overdrive gear was really chanting. It just opens up the heart and lets you go forward. So that's kind of what happened. We started traveling a lot, and from festival to festival, just chanting. It can't be better,
Right.
right?
Right.
I was still working a 9 to 5 job at that time,
Yeah.
and at one point it just started to become a little bit difficult to combine those two things. And that was one aspect. But also the second aspect was that my wife and the two children had moved uh, to my place in Germany, and they're not native to the German language.
Right.
So after 3 years of really struggling with different, trying all different kinds of schools, private schools, Montessori kind of schools,
Right.
um, we were just at our limit, and the kids really needed to move forward with school. Um, so we looked at our options, and we really didn't want to take a step back away from devotees. The only option was a step forward to bring our life closer to the devotees. And the only place that really offered that was Mayapur, because it's a full devotee community with a devotee school and everything like. So that was the only option. So
Mm.
I actually called uh, Radhanath Swami on the phone, and I asked him for advice.
Yeah.
Um, and in the old days, I guess maybe today it's still sometimes the case, but I kind of expected him to solve my problem. He's like, "Tell me what to do.
Right.
This is
Right. Yes.
difficult.
Yes.
Tell me what to do. This is difficult." And he's very expert. Um, he basically said, "Do what's right for your family." So he put the ball back in my court.
Right. Right. Right.
so so yeah, I guess that was also a confirmation. Okay, we need to go to Mayapur.
Right.
So
So
we moved. Yeah.
wonderful. So before that, you took initiation.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit
Uh,
about what led to that.
so a few years in, um, I had seen Maharaj a few times, and we were talking, and he was expressing how happy he was that I had been around, and that he was so proud of the service I was doing. There was nothing special that I was doing, but he's a master of encouraging people, right?
Yes.
He's a
Yes. Definitely.
master of encouraging even the smallest, spark. He encourages that to grow. Um, so again, I felt I have to take things serious. I really need to move on. There was no time to lose. There's no time to lose. Um, I was in a relationship with Vrindavan. At that time, we weren't married, and I realized I have to put some format to my life. I have to like really put format to my life if I want to move forward.
Mm.
So I realized I need to take my spiritual life serious, and I need to get initiated. But to do that, I have to get married first, right?
Mm.
I already like all the steps came bam, 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 just like that. I need to get married so that I can take initiation.
Mm. Interesting.
So all those steps came. I take care of my family properly, and then commit to my guru. And actually, it was quite spontaneous, because it's always a little bit of a mystery to figure out where Radhanath Swami is.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So suddenly there was a message saying that Radhanath Swami was in Italy, and he would be in Prabhupada Desh. Um, so I wrote him, and I said, Maharaj, I would like to take initiation. I would like to take shelter. And he gave his consent, and we drove down. We drove down to Italy in like a day, and it was really exhausting, because that was like a 20-hour drive or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and we kind of just took it in one go, and
Wow.
we arrived there. I think it was a Saturday or a Friday, I don't know. And the next day was going to be initiation. And
Yep. Little blip. He'll be back. I love these stories. It's so inspiring to hear. Just a little thing. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the comments. We'll take them after a little later in the show. Hari Kirtan Prabhu is frozen in time, telling the beautiful story of his initiation. All right. Oh, okay, he dropped. He's gonna drop. He's gonna come back. He said that in India, when his data runs out from one, I guess from one. Okay, he's back.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem at all.
In
Yeah,
India's internet.
yeah. I mean, it's great so far. But you were saying about
Yeah.
your you drove 20 hours.
Yeah. So I had a recommendation. I was able to go to the Guru Disciple course before traveling down there. So I had all my official papers, and I arrived. And the next morning, Malati Prabhu came to me, and she said, "When is the initiation?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know which time." And she said, "I really have to take my flight. I have to catch my flight. I have to go, but
Yeah.
I really want to stay. I want to stay and be part of this."
Yeah.
And so she went and talked to Radhanath Swami, and she managed to delay the appointment, to delay the initiation. Yeah, and she actually delayed her travel also, just so that she could be part of it. And it was such an honor. It was such an honor because, I mean, Malati was one of the first disciples, of Srila Prabhupada.
Yes.
And she had actually met my father in New York many years before. My father was doing Kirtan in Tompkins Square Park, and they had met there.
Wow.
And so they had a friendship, and so she really felt like she needed to stay,
Right.
and be part of it, seeing me come back officially.
Amazing.
And yeah, the initiation ceremony began, and Maharaj was speaking about my completely unglorious life as a karmi.
He was speaking about it.
He was speaking about it. He spoke about it for such a long time. It was almost embarrassing. And he made it an example, though. He used me as an example, but he managed to take my completely, nonsense life and turn it into something positive.
I mean, yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and he was basically saying, "Look, this guy, he went out into the world. He's seen the world, and after seeing the world, he's chosen Krishna."
Wow, amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and he made me go take blessings and pay obeisances to Malati Prabhu and from my parents, and then came the big question within my mind. Okay, so I used to be Hari Kirtan, then I rejected Hari Kirtan. I became Mr. Kaufman, right? And after becoming Mr. Kaufman, oh, now I'm Hari Kirtan again. Now I'm at a door, initiation door. Is he going to change my name again? Yeah, so the drum roll came, and he really dragged it out. He said, "Your name is Hari Kirtan Das." And he really put big emphasis on Das.
Das, yes.
Das. That was the big emphasis. He was making it very clear to me to be a servant of, to to be a servant of the servant, to be a servant of Kirtan. That's how I took the message, you know.
Right. Right.
And that is when, for me, that big question of destiny kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
Because destiny, you know, our gurus give us our names for a reason. They're not just any name.
Right.
They're for a reason, and they're meant to help us relate to Krishna in a certain way. So for me, that destiny fell into place when he kind of emphasized serve the holy name.
And you took first and second initiation together.
Yes, yeah, he gave me first and second together, and it was quite an amazing experience when I went up to his room and he spoke into my right ear. It was such a magical moment, very
Mm.
magical moment. Yeah,
Your parents must have been completely, I mean, like amazing roller coaster of emotions that parents go through. And now this was like the pinnacle, like I consider it the pinnacle of parenting, Krishna conscious parenting. Your child takes initiation and commits themselves to the path
yeah,
that you so you know, like with so much struggle you raised the
mm.
child and you gave him as much as you could possibly, and now he has taken this initiative. Like, what were your parents like? I mean, did you speak to them after? Like, what was their emotion? What were their emotions?
They were completely over the moon.
Yes.
They were completely over the moon. They were in bliss. Like this was the perfection of their life, like you said. Um,
Yeah.
and being a child, you know, you are always a child, no matter how old you are. You're always a child to your parents, right? That
Yes.
relationship develops a little bit, but you're always still their son, you know.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so it was also a relief for me because I could see that I had made them proud. You know, I had fulfilled something that they were working towards or that they had hoped for all their life.
Yeah.
So that was also one of the things that like bettered our relationship,
Mhm.
because there was a debt. You know, we have debts in our life, not just material debts, but also spiritual debts and karmic debts. So
Yeah.
like that, I felt like there was a spiritual debt that was there, and I had paid into that bank account by taking these steps, and
Mm.
yeah, it evened out a lot of disturbances
Yeah.
in many ways.
Do you feel like, when you look back now, do you feel like a sense of regret or a sense of like wasted time? Or do you think was like, okay, this is a divine arrangement of what happened?
I do feel that there's something valid in both sides. Um, for myself personally, I do feel like I've wasted a lot of my life. I have wasted a lot of that. That's the reality. I have wasted many years of my life. Um, but at the same time, there's also, let's say, from an aspect from the outside, like what I can offer to other people in my situation. There's a lot of advantages um, in the way things turned out because there's, you know, I was talking to some of my Gurukul friends just recently. We started a sangha, you know, a
Mhm.
friends sangha, like from the Gurukul days. We get together and
Right.
talk,
Right.
and we realized that this is actually an advantage. If you had experience in your life, there's nothing more relatable than having positive and negative experiences in life and struggle. When you can share that experience with others,
Yeah.
not everyone is coming from a, you know, a pure background. Not everyone is coming from a perfect environment.
Yes.
A lot of people go through life and they're struggling, and until they find Krishna, they've gone through a lot of things.
Yeah.
So this can actually be an asset to be able to relate to other
Totally.
human beings, and help each other. Help each other by knowing how they feel or the struggles they have.
Yeah.
So there's both sides. I feel regret that I didn't take things more serious earlier. At the same time, I also see the advantage of being able to relate to people.
Mm. What are your reflections as ISKCON as an institution, from being outside of it for so long? Like, when you go outside, you get like a different perspective of things than someone who's been in there the whole time, in this kind of bubble of ISKCON, you could say. So what kind of reflections do you have from seeing it from the outside now that you're back?
I think there's a few things that I could say to that. One is that the devotees are actually such beautiful people, and they have access to like amazing knowledge
Yeah.
and skills, artistry, so many beautiful creative things in life. And I kind of feel like, I mean, we see it now, like individuals are going out into the world and like flooding the world, like Janavi and all these people, such talented people that can present Krishna consciousness so beautifully. And I think if the community would be more professionally organized and relatable on the transition area to the outer world, that would really cause a shift, because people that are not living in devotee communities, they can't relate to devotee language, devotee behavior. It's so strange to them.
Right.
But Krishna consciousness is not strange. It's not strange. It's beautiful. So if they can see that beauty,
Yes.
then and in a professional way, and I think that's one thing that, of course, many projects aim towards that and are already doing this. But unfortunately, in the material world, professionalism is something you can't get around.
Mm.
You know, that's just the fact. So if we go for a professional way of presenting things, and we can work with other people, integration. This is definitely one aspect. I really feel there's a lot to be done there. Integration.
Right.
We've always thought as devotees we're separate, right? There's this idea we're separate. We're not separate. We're all in the same material world. We're not separate.
If you didn't notice, we're all the same.
Yeah. We all go to the bathroom. We all have to earn money. We all have to eat.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we're in the same struggles. It's the same struggles.
Mm.
But as devotees, we have such a wonderful approach to life, and to to the vision of life, to see how
Mm.
life is, to see how the world actually is. That we're not this body. We're not bound to this world.
Yeah.
So if we can relate to people outside, and they can understand that we have something to offer, and that's beautiful. And I think that's a way to move forward now.
I think there are some experiences that you can like that made you who you were today. Like, even for my own personal life, like there were things I went through that made me who I am today. And I think that's such a valuable thing, whether it is being away from the devotees or having struggles or whatever it is. I think that we should all, we go through life and we become someone because of our struggles or because of what we went through. And I think that's very valuable in what you're saying. I hear a lot of like humility in what you're saying. Like, okay, you went through like the ringer, like in your life and in all things, but then you came out of it with a sense of like, okay, gratefulness, and this is what led me to what I am now, and dedicating yourself to Kirtan and things like that. And I think that's really important lesson that we can all learn from your story. And I thank you for expressing that. I have a few more questions, but let's look at the comments. There's a few questions in the comments. Did you also live in Malaysia for some time?
Yes, I actually was in Malaysia for about a year
Okay, tell us a
in
little bit about
Penang
that.
and Kuala Lumpur. Penang and Kuala Lumpur, that was like the end phase of Kirtananda's, let's say, era. Let's call it
Okay,
like that.
right,
So there were some temples in Malaysia and Penang and Kuala Lumpur, and that was after I had gone back to Germany, and we sorted out our papers, and my parents still wanted, like, there was no real functional devotee community at that time because of the Harikesh situation was happening.
right.
So we decided to go to Malaysia. That was a a known turf for us. We had been living in Singapore before, which is just at the tip down south of Malaysia. So we
Right,
went there, lived there for a year, but everything was dissolving at that time.
right.
And all those temples were dissolving, and it was quite evident that we couldn't stay. It wasn't,
Mm,
and also there was no school for me and my sister. We couldn't go to school, so there was no real perspective for us. So
mm.
we left after a year in Malaysia.
I forgot to mention you have
Yeah.
siblings.
Yes, I have one sister. She's younger than me.
Okay.
She's 4.5 years younger than me.
Okay. How's that? How's your relationship with her? And what was her, I mean, in a very short way, what was her journey like? Was it similar to yours?
Well, her journey, I wouldn't want to speak for her, but
Sure.
we do have a good relationship.
That's good.
But I don't think she's very interested in being a devotee at this moment,
Right.
um, which is okay. She has her own decisions to make.
Right.
I completely respect that. Um, Also, because she was younger, she wasn't really going to Gurukul in New Vrindavan at that time.
Hmm.
Um, she didn't have that Gurukul experience, but of course, she's had also her experiences in New Vrindavan, negative ones, but also positive ones.
Sure.
Um, and her generation, for some reason, I can't really analyze it at this moment. From her generation, I don't see that many people around at all. Actually, in
Right.
my generation is.
Right. Yes. I think we got a little blip again. Let's look at the next question. Another thing, if you have a question, please put it in the comments now. I'm going to go through the questions. So put your question in the comments, and I'll get to it. I'm just going down the line here as Hari Kirtan Prabhu returns. A friend of mine gave me this mug with my face on it. Pretty cool, huh? Okay.
Haribo.
Haribo, and we're back.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah,
No
we're
problem
back.
at all. No problem. Okay.
Okay.
Madhurika Dasi says, what have you done differently with your own kids to help them navigate their identity as Krishna kids in the secular world?
Okay, so there's a few things that I can definitely say to that. One thing is force. You know, we believe, at least I believe, that spiritual life is something we really need to discover ourselves.
Right.
And we can grow up in an environment that's conducive for that, for sure. It gives guidance and impulse and inspiration. But there is no spiritual life without really making that decision yourself. If you don't
Agreed.
make that decision yourself, you're not going to be really living a spiritual life, because it's just, how do you say, giving in to pressure around you. So
Right.
that's something we were very clear about, that our children should only be practicing spiritual activities out of their own interest. Of course, we give them the opportunity, the environment, and the encouragement, but it will never be out of force.
Right.
And and also, what we always do is we always um, make sure that we expose them to both worlds in a protected way, of course. But we travel from Mayapur to Europe. We travel around. We spend time also in the secular world, um, and I think it's important to not lose track of the world around us, especially for people like us who always have dealings with people outside of the community. Uh,
Mm,
our position in life is not a family that will stay in Mayapur forever and will not have contact. We are always in contact with other people, with people outside the community, and it's important to be able to relate to them. If you can't relate to them, then they can't relate to you. There's no connection. There's no. It's really hard to influence people if you can't relate to each other.
yeah.
So that's kind of our family is set up like that. That our spiritual activities are self-motivated through a positive environment, and that we are also exposing ourselves to normal people, talking with them, dealing with them, sharing with them. That's important. We don't want to be, you know, we don't want to feel separate or divided. Yeah.
Right. So in essence, like having a certain balance when it comes to devotional, raising the children in a devotional atmosphere, but also exposing them in a controlled way to the so-called, the secular world.
Yeah.
How has it
This.
been? Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, especially teenagers in their years of finding their identity, anything that's pressured will be rejected. That's, I mean, my own experience. I was the same. When you put pressure on a teenager to be a certain way or to act a certain way, the rejection is immediate.
Yes.
You can see it.
Right.
It's like a no-brainer to in that phase, have a good relationship with your children, have a good relationship, be a friend, show some understanding. Krishna,
Yeah.
Krishna is, chanting, and Krishna is so strong. When you've once been exposed to it, you won't forget it. You will never forget it, and that's something I've learned to have confidence in. Through my own experience, through my own life, I've grown confidence that Krishna is strong enough. He will persist. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
if it's not this lifetime, it'll be another lifetime. But he will win. He's always
Yeah.
going to win.
Beautiful comment. I mean, I'm sure Mayapur, like, how has it been with them in Mayapur? I mean, you're for your children, like, that must be like, that's a real immersion in a spiritual community.
Yes, completely. That brings challenges with it too, of course.
Interesting.
Um, because dynamics of a community, especially within India. India has its own set of rules and culture and superstitions and all these things.
Yes.
And growing up as a devotee outside of India, you don't really have to face those things. You're not aware of them at all.
Yeah.
You have your culture of your Western countries, but in India these things all kind of just flow in to your everyday devotee life, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to like pull them apart. What is yet really our Krishna conscious lifestyle, and what is influence from the surrounding? It's not always easy. Especially there's a lot of judgment going on in India. There's a lot of criticism for individuality. Individuality is something that's somehow not well looked upon in
Mm,
India.
mm.
Um, and when you're coming from the West, it's quite opposite. Your individual identity is quite important. So there's a little bit of a clash there.
Right. Right.
So there's a little bit of a struggle. But other than that, it's wonderful to live in Mayapur. It's incredible. I mean, everything in the shops, the produce, everything is, made by devotees, grown by devotees. Cheese, bread. It doesn't get better. It's like it's the heaven for every devotee.
Right. Wonderful. All right. Let's take a question. Mukunda, Russell, do you have any advice on what factors can help a devotee child interested and invested in their growth in bhakti? I mean, you mentioned a few things, but any more advice?
My advice would be to always have a good friendly relationship and encouraging positive relationship. And I can see that. I take an example from my own Guru Maharaj. Throughout my life, whatever nonsense I've done, he's never judged me. He's never judged me. He's always been there, always giving the positive impulse, giving the positive support, the encouragement. And he's always made me feel loved and welcome. And I think that is one of the core principles to really developing spiritual inspiration and spark and commitment, to never feel judged, to always feel loved. And that's what bhakti is about, right?
Yeah.
Bhakti is about love and relationship. So if you can already experience that in a one-to-one, one-on-one environment, then it becomes logical that you can develop that for Krishna.
Right. I mean, I think this ties into his next question. We all probably know devotees who have fallen away in some form of another. Can you share your thoughts on what best practices can be applied to bring them back in or maintain a loving relationship with them? I'm sure something like no judgment, but please take that question.
Yes, judgment is always a big problem. And I think in our community, it's very easy to judge and to criticize and to divide. Um, Unfortunately, it's like that. I'm not saying it's like to blame, that the devotees are to blame. It's just human nature. Human nature is like that. We
Mm.
find all kinds of reasons to. It's part of the ego, right? It's part of I am this, you are that. So the more we advance in our spiritual life, the less we will have that boundary to judge people. So always having a welcoming approach to others, and always reaching out to others. How are you doing?
Mm.
This is bhakti is about relationship to others, and
Yeah.
we really need to put effort into relationship. That's the beginning of the practice.
Someone told me a story of Srila Prabhupada. One of his servants had fallen away and even started eating meat, and Prabhupada had come to that city that devotee was at, and Prabhupada said, "Where is that so and so?" And they said, "Oh, Prabhupada, he left, and he's a non devotee eating meat now and everything." And Prabhupada said, "Call him and tell him to come. I want to see him. He's very dear to me. I want to see him." And then that person did eventually come back to see Prabhupada at that time. And Prabhupada said, "Will you cook for me? I love the way you cook for me." And the devotees were like, "Prabhupada, he's a meat eater now. He's like contaminated and stuff." And then he said, "Be quiet. I want him to cook for me." And he was with tears in his eyes. He brought that devotee back and accepted him again. Like how amazingly open-minded, how broad-minded, how merciful Srila Prabhupada is. I feel like as devotees, we miss that sometimes. We can be, like you said, we can, there's some judgment that's there, that devotees can be extremely judgmental, even more than non-devotees sometimes. So we should see the example of our founder Acharya, that how much, I mean, even Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's a story of like that. I think it was I forget who it was, but he had one devotee had left, and Bhaktisiddhanta came for a temple opening. He said, "Where's that so and so devotee?" And they said, "Oh, he left because he fallen down or something." And Bhaktisiddhanta said, "I'm not going to open this temple unless you bring him back. We take buckets and buckets of blood and sweat to get someone to come to our society, and then when they leave, we just like okay, bye, see you later." No, that's not. It's a great example of how we should really be non-judgmental. Thank you for that. Let's take another question here. How do you deal with friends and associates who are against ISKCON due to their past experiences?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I guess because of how loud we have been about our lifestyle change, it hasn't really come to the situation so often that I've been confronted with people who are against ISKCON.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, that may be an advantage of being quite straight up about what you want in life and where you're going, because all people that don't harmonize with that will stay away.
Mm.
I haven't been verbally attacked yet in any way, so that's a positive. Um, but how to deal with people that are against ISKCON? Again, I mean, we can only say to not be judgmental. So many people have suffering in their life. For some reason, they're in that situation at the
Yeah.
moment in their life, and we can only have some kind of understanding for their suffering and why they have that point of view or that perspective. And some of those points are even valid. I mean, I wouldn't take away their value. Some of those points are valid why this person is feeling like that.
Mm.
There's it's not always, not everything always goes perfect. There's also some damage done along the way. Um, but behind that suffering person, there's always, an individual devotee that is struggling to find their connection with Krishna. And it might not be ISKCON, it might be in a different way.
Right.
I remember in a lecture from our Guru Maharaj, him saying that we should always be strict with ourselves and show compassion to others.
Yes.
And I think that's such a simple rule that we can always follow. And it helps in this situation also, even for those who are inimical to ISKCON. We always see ISKCON as the only solution. But Krishna has
Mm.
many representatives, and Krishna has many ways to attract people to him. And for that person, it may not be ISKCON, it might be some other way.
Yeah.
And that person's journey may be quicker or maybe longer. We don't know. It's
Mm.
not for us to decide that.
Right. All right, we have another question here from Destiny Marie Riley. What advice would you have for someone new to Krishna consciousness? This is a very broad question, but in short, what would you say?
I would say don't hold back. Look for someone that you can confide in and can share your experiences with. Um, this is something very, very important. Um, Krishna consciousness is a spiritual path, and in every spiritual path, as an individual, you will have ups and downs. There will be days where you will doubt everything that you're practicing. There will be days where are immersed in ecstasy
Hmm.
and gratitude for what you have found.
Right.
But it is important to be able to share that with someone. Otherwise, the riding the tide may cause you to leave in a weak moment, because it's not always easy. No
Yeah.
matter how long you're practicing Krishna consciousness, there will always be some major challenge coming your way.
Yeah.
And the only way to survive it is to have the right people around you that you can talk to.
Sure. So that is
So my advice is to have good relationships and practice Krishna consciousness and share your experience with those people.
right. I had another question at the end, but I think it's a good time to ask it now. What would you say to someone who's a devotee, but who's feeling deeply disconnected, or they don't resonate with it anymore, or they don't relate with it anymore? Still there, Prabhu? Can you hear me? Looks like we lost audio, maybe. Can you hear me?
I think there's a big delay. Right now,
Okay.
there's a few seconds delay, but I have received your question,
Okay.
Namras.
Yes.
What do you do with someone who is already a devotee, or what advice do you have who's already a devotee but doesn't relate to it anymore?
Yes.
Actually, yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. I can hear you. There's just a big delay.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm here, Namras. I'm still here, so I think there's just a major delay.
Yeah, there's a delay.
I can hear you.
Perhaps I'll keep, I'll reconnect you. Okay, I'll remove you and I'll
Okay,
reconnect.
so I'm just going to continue. I guess that there's a delay that you're just going to have to deal with. Okay.
Okay.
So, advice for someone who's a devotee. Well, I personally just recently, the year 2020, um, went through some experiences that I had shared on social media also, but I'll share here again. Um, after chanting and practicing Krishna consciousness for many years, there's still many obstacles to overcome and many hurdles.
Okay. We're gonna reconnect. Hari Kirtan.
Haribol Namras?
Haribol.
Okay, so we're
Okay.
back. There
We're
was
back.
some internet
Yes.
issue.
Go. You were gonna tell a story.
Okay, it's less of a delay now.
Yes.
Yeah. So, um, early 2020, it was during Lord Nityananda's appearance day. We took a trip to Ekachakra. There was a Kirtan festival there, and um, I was quite burnt out from the last year of traveling. 2019 was really rough for me, and I had reached my personal mental and physical limits traveling. So this was like one of the first Kirtan events after that, and Vishrambar was there along with a few other friends. And at this festival, um, like Lord Nityananda was really putting me through some tests because all these years I had put all my game on one card, and that was chanting. That one card was chanting. That's my only saving grace is chanting.
Right.
All my gold is on that card. And during that festival, somehow a veil was removed, and suddenly I felt like I had lost all inspiration, all interest in kirtan, all taste.
Really?
I had lost taste in kirtan. I lost taste in chanting, and
Wow.
it was really frightening because that's my only pillar. The only thing I can hold on to.
Yeah.
And if I lose that, like where am I going to be? And I went through a struggle, a real struggle of really questioning my intention of chanting. Like you were saying earlier, you have to make a decision, right? You have to.
Yeah.
So for me, like that showed me that those decisions have to be made over and over again in your spiritual life. It's not made once. It's not like you're safe after you decided to become a devotee. No, like throughout your development, your progress, or your struggles as a devotee, you will have to face that decision over and over again. Like, why
Yeah.
am I chanting? Is it really selfless? Is it to please Krishna, or am I chanting to get attention, or am I chanting to get fame,
Yeah.
or all these things? And suddenly I felt like I had been chanting all this time for my personal ego. I had been chanting just to fulfill the desire of adoration and acknowledgement. And with those, through that view, everything was distorted. I found no pleasure, no joy in chanting anymore. It became actually the opposite. It became something I didn't want to be around anymore, because that ego, that sense of ego, was so prominent that I was seeing it in everyone and everything.
Wow.
It was ruining my experience of kirtan, and I had to leave. I had to leave the kirtan. But it was really, really churning my heart, because for all these years I had been practicing as much as possible, putting all my effort, all my time into chanting. And I felt lost and forsaken. I felt like Krishna had forgotten me,
Mm.
or Krishna had cheated me. I actually felt like that. Krishna was cheating me. I have invested so much. I've invested so much in you. And the result is that I feel worse than before.
Right.
Of course, in relation to eternity, in relation to everything, I had invested nothing, right? But my ego was hurt. I felt like I was deserving some reciprocation, deserving some reward for what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's obviously the ego calling out. So luckily, I was able to take some personal advice from a few of my friends, and I took shelter of Sachinanand Swami, and I called him, and we had a long talk together, and he gave me some very good advice. Because I think these kind of situations, if we're honest about our spiritual life, and we're not going throughout our spiritual life with a facade, real spiritual life has struggles. There will always be struggles. There will always be difficulties.
Right.
And Sachinanand Swami is actually one of the people I really feel preaches to us in that way and shows us, you've been chanting for 10 years or more. You need to go to the next step,
Yes.
you know? So he gave me very good advice. He said, you need to be alone and discover your personal relationship with Krishna. Namras, you still there?
I'm still here. Yeah.
You still there, Namras? Okay.
Yep.
It froze for a second. So he said, you need to be alone, and you need to discover your personal relationship with Krishna. And you need to take the time away from everyone. He was saying, go to the Ganga, sit there alone, and chant out your heart. Sing to Krishna, tell him your frustration, your anger. Show him your emotion. Tell him how you're feeling, and rediscover that personal relationship, because I had lost it, because I was so absorbed in the outer world that the actual reason for chanting was lost, you know?
Wow.
So he really helped me. He really helped me with that. And that's kind of something that automatically happened in the year 2020. That might have been a year for everyone, where everyone had to reevaluate, what does it mean for me to be a devotee?
Right.
I can't be around other people anymore. I'm alone. I can't go to festivals anymore. But what does it mean for me to be a devotee? It's actually a blessing, a year of blessing to really, you know, make that decision again and find that reason why. Why am I chanting? Why am I looking for Krishna? Why is Krishna? Why is Krishna my Lord?
Wonderful. Wonderful
And
realization.
yeah, that's something I can only say to a practicing devotee is when you lose that connection, you need to take the time. You really need to take the time to find that personal connection. It's a personal thing. It's a personal relationship. The the association of the devotees helps us, but we have to be connected. We have to
Mm.
have that relationship. Otherwise, we are only acting upon social norms. If we're not acting upon that personal relationship, it will be fake. It will not have substance.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Hari Kirtan Prabhu. That's we're an hour and 40 minutes. This was a fascinating interview. I really appreciate your hearing your story. And although I knew of you and I met you a few times, I didn't know this certain depth that you had in your life and the struggles you went through. And just you sharing that it just makes me appreciate you a lot more. And I'm very grateful that to have a friend like you and to know you. And I think the ISKCON community can actually get a lot from hearing a story like yours, and devotees can really gain some insight. They can get some relief, and if they're having some struggle, to hear someone's story like yours. And please continue to share your story. And if you'd like to get in touch with Hari Kirtan Prabhu, he is on Instagram as at Hari Kirtan Das. He's also on Facebook, and you can get him there as well. He's always traveling, always sharing kirtan. He does a lot of wonderful Instagram stories from Mayapur. You can also follow him there
Mhm.
on Instagram. So that's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Hari Kirtan Prabhu, for joining me.
Thank you for the opportunity, for being here, and allowing us to share with each other.
Yes, no problem. So, if you'd like to, if you like these interviews, go to my fundraiser. I put the comment. I put the comment in the link in the comments here. You can give a little bit of a donation for this to continue for 2021, and that's it. That's episode 42 with Hari Kirtan Prabhu. Thank you, everyone. Hari Kirtan Prabhu, you could stay on a little bit longer. I'm just going to turn
Thank
off the
you.
live. Bye, everyone.
Okay.